Hey folks, this is Kelani. Welcome back to the Battle of Dazar'alor raid guide for normal and heroic. This time we'll be taking down King Rastakhan. This fight has quite a few phases and a whole bunch of abilities, so it might take a little bit to learn everything. You'll start the fight with Rastakhan and a few adds. In this phase, Rastakhan's health can't be lowered, but any damage done to him will be split amongst the adds, so attacking him isn't a complete waste of time, but you need to kill the adds to enter the next phase. Rastakhan has a few abilities, the first of which is Scorching Detonation. The tank with aggro will have a fire laser channeled at him, and when it finishes the tank will explode for a lot of raid-wide damage. The damage is reduced the further away you are from the raid, so you should try to move away as best you can. He will also cast Plague of Toads. This sends out 3 toads which will move in a straight line until they hit a player, or until they hit a wall. Any player who gets hit will get a large damage over time effect, so avoid these whenever you can. On heroic mode they will also leave behind pools on the ground as they hop, just don't stand in them. Because these two abilities can be kind of annoying, and because Rastakhan himself doesn't really need to be DPS'd, we had our tank drag him over into the corner to just chill out until phase 2. This gives you so much time to dodge the toads that they just aren't a problem, and because the tank is alone he never has to move for Scorching Detonation. On heroic mode you will also have to deal with Serpent Totems. Rastakhan will throw these down right next to him and they'll start breathing fire. The tank with Rastakhan will have to avoid these, but if you put the boss in the naughty corner this mechanic is negated entirely. Those totems despawn as you enter phase 2 as well, so you will never have to deal with them properly. Just make sure a healer or two can reach the Rastakhan tank at all times. To enter phase 2, all you have to do is kill the adds. On normal you have 2 adds, Siegebreaker Roka and Prelate Zalin. Roka is the most important add and should be focused down first. This is mainly due to Meteor Leap, which targets a random player and will deal massive damage to the target after a short delay. That damage has to be shared with your raid, so everyone should stack up in melee to make sure no one dies. He also has Crushing Leap, where he jumps to the current tank and applies a damage increase debuff. You're supposed to swap tanks for this, but they should also just be able to handle at least 2 stacks of the debuff if they use their cooldowns properly and ask for externals. Our tanks never had a problem with this getting too high before the add died, but you can tank swap if you really need to. The other add only has one ability, Seal of Purification. This spawns a large beam that chases random players. Just avoid the beam and you shouldn't have any problems. On heroic mode you'll have a third add, Headhunter Galwana. This chap only has one ability too, Grievous Axe. He'll throw an axe at a random player which inflicts a large amount of damage and causes the target to bleed until they're healed above 90%, so make sure you heal the target up quickly. When all of the adds are dead you'll enter phase 2. Everyone will get stunned and Bwonsamdi will appear. During this phase Bwonsamdi is entirely immune to damage, so there's no point in even trying to DPS him. He will also have an aura of death around him. It's a faint green circle. If anyone stands in that circle they will gain stacks of Deathly Withering, which deals damage over time. You're going to want one tank take Bwonsamdi over to where Rastakhan was in phase 1 and pull Rastakhan into the room so only the tank has to stand in his aura of death. If anyone else is getting stacks at this point, they're doing it wrong. You need to tank swap to prevent those stacks from getting too high, and the best time to tank swap is when the Rastakhan tank gets Scorching Detonation. Run over to Bwonsamdi with a laser and taunt swap. That way the detonation only triggers on the tanks and Rastakhan doesn't move at all. The tank with Bwonsamdi will also be getting a healing absorption effect put on him, so again make sure your healers can reach both tanks at all times. The last ability Bwonsamdi has in this phase is Death's Door. He'll apply a debuff to a random raid member which deals damage over time. When it expires it leaves behind a Death Rift. These are very important later on, try and place them towards the edge of the room as best you can. Rastakhan will still use Scorching Detonation, obviously, which you're going to use for your tank swaps, as well as Plague of Toads, but he'll gain a few other abilities too. Plague of Fire will debuff a few random players with a fiery AoE circle. This deals a bit of damage, but it will also spread to anyone else in the circle after 1.5 seconds. Your range should be spread out for the majority of this phase to try and stop this from spreading. The other ability he gets is Zombie Dust Totem. He'll throw down a totem which starts to mind control people. You need to nuke the totem as quickly as possible to save the mind control players. You need to be super careful here. You can kill the mind control person so quickly just with passive cleave. One trick we used was for shamans to use their tremor totem whenever the mind control totem went out. This broke the mind control instantly and allowed us to kill the mind control totem without any issues. If you don't kill the totem it will start to mind control other people, so it always has to die. The next phase starts when Rastakhan gets to 60% health. He'll tell Bwonsamdi to stop slacking and do something, which is when Bwonsamdi pulls the closest half of your raid down into the Death Realm. Because he pulls the closest players, you can actively decide who gets pulled down. I would recommend sending your melee and most mobile DPS into the Death Realm with a few healers to keep them alive. At 60%, our assigned players ran closer to Bwonsamdi and the rest of us made sure we were further away. You don't need a tank in the Death Realm, so be sure to get them across the room as quickly as you can so they don't get pulled in. We used a life grip for extra safety. In the Death Realm, you'll periodically gain stacks of Deathly Withering, which if you remember just deals damage over time, but the only way to clear them is to run through one of the Death Gates. This won't let you leave the Death Realm, but it will clear your stacks. Every time you clear stacks, you deal raid-wide AoE damage to anyone still in the Living Realm, so you can't clear them too often, otherwise you're just going to kill the raid. We had our players clear when they got to around 10 stacks, but we made sure that they cleared in a staggered fashion. If everyone clears at the same time, you're going to kill the raid, so spread them out a little bit, but don't let your stacks get too high. Bwonsamdi will also use Caress of Death on random players, so be sure to just heal that up quickly. The main problem downstairs is all of the death shards, that's the orbs floating around everywhere. This is why melee and mobile DPS are preferred in the Death Realm, but if any of those shards hit a Death Gate, they will also spawn in the Living Realm too. This obviously isn't ideal, but it just means you have more things to dodge. You can't really do anything about it anyway. Bwonsamdi will also cast Inevitable End. You'll see a huge AoE appear around him, and he'll start sucking players towards him. You need to move away from him as he starts casting this, and get as far away as you can. If you're too close to him when this cast finishes, you'll either die instantly or take a huge amount of damage. Meanwhile, in the Living Realm, Rastakhan will be gaining stacks of Bwonsamdi's boon. This increases his damage by 2% every 15 seconds, and this stacks for the rest of the fight. So it's a race against the clock at this point. Apart from that, Rastakhan won't do anything new, but you will see a few new adds. On normal, you get the Phantom of Retribution and Phantom of Rage. If you kill either of these adds, they will spawn in the Death Realm, and they already have enough to deal with, so you should just keep them alive until the last phase. You can damage them, and you should probably get them fairly low before the next phase begins, but try not to kill them. The Phantom of Retribution will cast Grave Bolts at random players. This just deals damage and needs to be healed up. They will also cast Seal of Bwonsamdi, which spawns AoE circles on the floor. These have to be soaked, otherwise they will deal raid-wide AoE damage. Only one person needs to soak them, so try not to double dip too much. The Phantom of Rage will use Necrotic Smash, which deals damage to anyone in his AoE marker and reduces the healing they take by 50% for 8 seconds. This is avoidable and it's pretty easy to avoid, so just don't stand in the AoE. On Heroic mode, you'll also get the Phantom of Slaughter. This ad will also cast Grave Bolt, so more damage to heal up, but he will also cast Focus Demise. This targets a random player and channels a large damage over time effect. Only the targeted player can interrupt it, so if you notice it, try to give it a quick kick. It's not game changing if you don't interrupt it, but try to at least use a personal cooldown to stay alive. All of the ads also have Undying Relentlessness, which makes them immune to crowd control after 60 seconds. One tank should hold Rastakhan while the other holds the ads. This phase also ends when Bwonsamdi reaches 50% health in the Death Realm. After that, Bwonsamdi runs away and all you have to do is finish off Rastakhan, but you should start by taking care of the ads first. Nuke them down to remove their abilities from the encounter and then focus on Rastakhan. During this phase you'll still have to deal with the Scorching Devastation, the Plague of Toads, Plague of Fire, Death's Door, and the stacking damage buff on Rastakhan, but he will also start using Inevitable End, which is the exact same thing as what Bwonsamdi used earlier. A few more death rifts will also start spawning around Rastakhan, so keep dodging those little balls. The last phase is pretty straightforward. It's all abilities you've already seen. You're just racing against the clock at this point. Try to keep things tidy, don't spread the fire around, and be sure to run away when he starts his huge AoE. And that's all you should need to take down King Rastakhan on normal and heroic. Stay tuned for more boss guides to help you conquer the Battle of Dazar'alor. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.